and welcome to the Business Spotlight. I'm your host, Patrick Dewar. I have a fabulous show today. I've got a litigator that, you know, it's kind of funny. Have you ever heard of somebody that says, yeah, I like to play with mavericks. They're in my field. I like to chase them down. I like to represent them because usually they're the guys that think big, plan big, and usually fall in big doo-doo. Cleve, Cleve, thanks for being on the show.
My pleasure.
Now, your law firm is Looper, Reed, and McGraw, right?
Correct.
Okay. And when I think of mavericks, I mean, I imagine you probably have handled some doozies to come up with that. Tell me something about what you're doing.
A classic maverick is an entrepreneur. He's somebody, he or she is someone who pulls himself up by the bootstraps every morning. They're the chief cook, bottle washer. They open the door at their business. They have hired all the employees. They find themselves often they're the accountant, the HR personnel, the benefits personnel. They're the managers, they're the supervisors. And then one day, the successful entrepreneurs grow up and their businesses grow up and they turn into successful businesses. And then as that entrepreneur, that maverick, learns how to grow his business, then someday he learns to delegate, and when he or she learns to delegate, then they create a robust business that I have often described as it rises above the radar screen of litigation and all of a sudden makes them a nice target for people to want to shoot at.
Now, I know that in our culture, you can sue people for everything or anything, is what it sounds like, right?
Absolutely.
So what are some people that, I want to say some types of people that you've really been able to help? When I say you've talked about one, what I want to do is I'd like to hear some stories, because there's nothing that tells people more about what you do than a couple of good stories. Well,
there's one client who is in the electronics manufacturing business, and it's a small industry, small number of available customers, and it was not uncommon for them to have a customer come in, make big promises of big orders, want a low price. In order to deliver the price, they needed to deliver inventory. They needed to purchase inventory in quantity so they too could in turn pass over the reduced price. And the customer would intentionally or unintentionally would end up with a large order that would not be filled, leaving my client with an unusually large amount of inventory, which was then burning against their line of credit. Tough situation. Over time, in a long time of representing this particular client, I've persuaded them to enter into a manufacturing services agreement, the purpose of which was to sit down with the customer on the front end to eliminate what's often called in the Uniform Commercial Code a battle of forms. I send you a request for purchase, you send back to me a purchase order, I send back to you the invoice, and so forth. And each one of those documents takes precedence over the other. In this particular case, they agreed, the customer and the client agreed, that they would enter into a manufacturing services agreement. The master agreement would control whatever the form said. The result of which was one of the clients the customers that my client had an inventory run up of over $750,000. And because of the services agreement, they were able to persuade their customer that they needed to repurchase the inventory to the tune of $750,000. Very successful, and it was done without the necessity of litigation. In fact, I really didn't even get involved.
That's awesome, because I know that in the last few years, with credit drying up the way that it has, it's been probably a bit of a nightmare for a lot of businesses to try to get a good price, but yet, it's like, okay, you're going to prepay for this stuff? I mean, right? So what else are you doing for your clients that is really setting you apart as an attorney?
That's on the perhaps the preparation end. On the fix the problem after it's already left the door end.
Which the fire's going.
Right, which is the time you get called more often than not. The house is on fire. Could you please send over the fire truck, or better yet, the fire prevention company to stop the fire?
That's right. Yeah. That's right. The insurance no, it didn't work.
Little late. Well, a couple of fun circumstances, and regrettably, I had a couple of clients that did not manage to execute a will. In one case, the family was expecting that the normal course of the delivery of the estate was going to be taken care of easily. Instead, there was a girlfriend that showed up with a alleged will. The notary public on the will we were able to track down and find out that the notary had in fact not signed the will. That was gone. So that was a little litigation that worked out well.
That is excellent. Well, when we come back, I want to really look at who's the ideal client for you, because I know that you have a specific qualification. They need to be somebody that's a kind of a mover and shaker, and really get into what their experience with you is like, as far as how to engage, how to connect, what to expect all the way down the road. The thing is that this is the Business Spotlight. The show is really about having successful business owners tell their story to show a different story, a successful story in the workplace today. I'm Pat Dewar. We'll be right back. And welcome back to the Business Spotlight. I'm your host, Patrick Dewar. My guest today, Cleve Clinton. He's an attorney in the DFW area, and he loves to play with Mavericks, as in like represent them, because usually they get in the biggest mess. So Cleve, thank you so much again for being on the show. And I really want to get into more of who you serve. Who's your ideal client?
My ideal client is a maverick. It's an entrepreneur. It's someone who owns their own business, and they've built their business up into something that is it's larger than themselves. They've delegated much of their responsibilities to other people. They have probably 3 or 4 managers. They may perhaps have an accountant on board, perhaps an HR manager, and they've got 50 employees, 100 employees or more.
Now, when you go to work with those people, what's the process that you walk them through?
Often they come to me when the house is on fire. And so my goal when everything is falling around their ears is to sell them a little peace of mind. That's the number one thing that I think all of us are looking for is, how do I know that everything is going to be all right? And that's generally very easily obtainable. Certainly once you can identify what the problem is, and then you can identify what the goals are going to be. Once you identify that you've got a goal in mind, then it's just a process of getting to the goal.
So somebody today, how does an engagement start? Somebody has been served with some sort of papers. They call you and go, bail me out or whatever, help me. And then is that typical, or?
One case that I had recently was a case where a client had been served with papers. The bank was trying to collect money from them. They contended that the bank should have provided a line of credit to them and did not. And as they talked more and more, we delved into their records. And inevitably, the process is to both understand the client's dilemma and then to encourage them to go find all the documentation that supports or is problematic even, so that you can deal with whatever the problems are for their position. In this particular case, the client kept insisting that they had reached an agreement to extend their letter of credit, and in fact we found email exchanges between the lawyers that we believe were sufficient to support an argument that the contract had in fact been completed because of the authorized agents. The lawyers were the agents for each of the parties. Their exchange of emails, we argued, created a completed, renewed, and amended letter of credit. So the result of which was that it put, instead of the client being in default, the default was the banks.
Wow, I bet that didn't go over too well at their office.
About $12 million worth, and not too well.
Sweet.
So
wow,
that worked out very well. The client was pleased, and it put us in a position to work with the bank to more favorable terms, shall we say, for a business divorce between the parties.
I completely get that. I'm just curious though, do you spend your time in court, or is it mostly in negotiation? I mean, where do you think I mean, my background in watching attorneys has been, it seemed like they were always trying to negotiate out, but what's your experience?
That's a great question. Many of my clients, entrepreneurs, would rather not spend much time at the courthouse, and they don't understand what lawyers are doing, banging around at the courthouse, spending a lot of their money and cost and expense at the courthouse. On the other hand, the circumstances sometimes require it. The ultimate goal is to come up with the right tools that put you in a position to get the best result as fast as possible. Time really is money. And so the goal is, the faster you can get to a good result, the better the result probably is going to be, and the more satisfied the client's going to be.
Absolutely. I know that, you know, time kills deals, or it probably in your situation just adds cost. But how will someone connect with you if they want to get a hold of you?
To get a hold of me, you can email me at cclinton@lrmlaw.com, or you can go to www.tiltingthescales.com. We do a monthly, 2 articles a month. We're likely to be expanding that to go into more, but our goal is to provide business insight with a little bit of humor into legal issues that affect business owners, much like the Mavericks that we like to represent.
I wouldn't doubt. I'm sitting here just thinking, once somebody does connect with you, is there a process that you walk them through, or a system that you enter them into?
Classically, the starting point for, you wouldn't believe, almost every client is to get them to sit down and figure out what's their problem and what is it they think they really want. Then my job is to be able to, it's to try to tell them in as polite and perhaps as encouraging words as possible whether I think I can deliver them. For example, it's not uncommon for me to say, I'm sorry, dueling was abolished a couple of 100 years ago, so that's not an option. We'll have to go to option number 2.
Oh, that, I totally get that. So they can get to you on your website again is?
The website is tiltingthescales.com.
Tiltingthescales.com. And then your firm's phone number?
214-954-4135, or lrmlaw.com also gets to all the lawyers in the full formal extravaganza for the law firm. The tiltingthescales.com is more tongue-in-cheek legal humor.
I get it. Well, we're almost out of time for this segment. This is the Business Spotlight. Cleve, thanks so much for being on the show.